Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher from Sweetwater. Thanks for joining me today. We have a very special guest with us. We're here in Studio A, and this is Victor Wooten. Great to see you, man.
Honored to be with you, Mitch.
Great to have you back here.
It's good, always good to be back.
Yeah.
This place is growing.
Right.
Amazing.
So what have you been up to for the lockdown period and as we open back up here?
Mitch, number one is being home.
Mm-hmm.
I've been touring a long time. I mean, with the Flecktones over 30 years, and then before that with different things. What I've been needing to do is be home with my kids and my wife. You know, I've got one child who's 23 and she's out of college, living in New York. And I don't know that I've been home a full month in a row, days in a row for her whole life.
Wow.
Literally.
Yeah.
And I've got 4 kids. My youngest is 16. My 17-year-old is about to go to college in a few months. But I get to be home and sit at the dinner table and the breakfast table and
Nice.
and harass them and do what dads do,
Right.
So it's been really nice.
Good. And have you had opportunity then to sit down and expand your playing, or what do you work on musically when you have some downtime like that?
As little as possible.
Okay.
Yeah, literally as little as possible. I've been needing the break from music.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I recommend it for a lot of musicians, is to put the instrument down and figure out what's left, right? Who am I without a bass in my hands? Because I've been doing it so long, it's so easy to define myself by what I do. But my kids don't really care that I play bass.
Right.
The kids want a dad. My wife needs a husband. So, because of my parents and my brothers, I never really lost sight of that. But it's just nice to put the bass down and not play for a while. It's not like I'm going to forget.
Right.
But I'm refueling myself of the ingredients of what music is really about, which is life, relationships, things like that, so that when I get back to playing, it's going to be better.
Right.
More to talk about.
Well, speaking of those topics, I think last time we talked about the music lesson, which was your first book, and now you have The Spirit of Music, and that's a little different take on things. And I was very interested to read through that and your thoughts on some of this in the context of how you presented it in the book.
Sure. I still treat the book as a fictional tale, even though I think the lessons in the book are real. Like any movie, they're teaching lessons, but to a fictional story. But yeah, I did release my second book, and both books are also on audio versions. And that was the biggest music project that I did over this pandemic, was to make an audio book for The Spirit of Music. And every chapter, and I don't even call them chapters, I call them measures.
Right.
It's filled with music. Every voice is a different voice. So I had to remote record people, and as well as get a lot of music done, because every chapter is filled with music. So I did get that done.
Right. Wow, that's awesome. Well, the book's great, and
It's different.
It's thought-provoking. We'll say, to put it mildly, it's thought-provoking and very, very inspiring, because you have a unique perspective based on the way you came up and learned music first. And the crux of the whole thing for me was that the music is first and then the rest of it comes later, meaning the instrument and the theory and all that. Could you address that a little bit?
Very true. I really do look at music the way I look at language. We learn to talk first. Before we ever learn alphabet, nouns, we just talk.
Mm-hmm.
And as a child, as a baby, an infant, you get to choose what you learn first. If you want more milk, you learn more milk first. And even if you say it wrong, no one corrects you. So in the beginning of the process of learning to speak, we totally get to do it our way, with our own voice. So no one's ever told you, man, you need to find your own speaking voice. Or you've never asked, how do I find my voice?
Right.
That only exists in music. Because if we're taught to play music, we're taught through someone else's voice. You have to learn your teacher's voice first, and then they tell you to go find your own. So we get our own voice taught out of us, and then we have to go find our voice. So in my humble opinion, the normal way we teach music is backwards. For me, whether you learn and be taught first and then you play later. That's an unnatural approach. The real approach is to talk, however you talk. right or wrong. I will learn to understand you. That's the way we do our babies. We learn their way, and then they learn our way. To me, that's a more natural approach. I was fortunate enough to learn music that way.
Mm-hmm. So for someone like myself, I've been playing for more years than we'll discuss here, and went through music school and had lots of lessons and all the training and things.
Mm-hmm.
So how do I flip my orientation at this point, having gone through so many years of that training? And not saying that's bad. I mean, I've gotten to where you get to. But if you want to reorient your perspective, how do you do that?
There's a few ways. One of the ways is think about what you want to say with music. A lot of times we don't really think about that. We just think about how to say it. What's the technique? What's the notes? What's the chords? That's what we've been taught. We've been taught how to play. We're rarely addressing why to play. Whoever asked you that? Why do you want to play guitar in the first place?
Right.
It's just how. And we learn how through other people. Right? In language, it's about what you have to say. How to say it is easy.
Mm-hmm.
So if we were able to approach music the same way, what is it that you want to say? Then you have more people like Willie Nelson, B.B. King. How many chords does Willie Nelson know? I don't know, probably 5.
Right.
But all he needs is one to stop you in your tracks because he has something to say. And he's also saying it real with his own voice. He's not thinking about techniques. Is this the right note? Is this the right chord? It's just expression. B.B. King, Elvis, Michael Jackson, these artists that are just 100% them. So for me, especially a person that has some age like us, that we've lived some years, we have stories to tell. You don't need a lot of technique and a lot of big words to tell a good story. When you have a good story like Bob Dylan, like Willie Nelson, the story is more important than the technique, and it should be. That's what music is about.
Right.
Stories, life, experiences. But we teach it as if it's about the right note, the right technique, or the right instrument. That's why I say it's backwards.
Mm-hmm.
So to answer your question, just tell a story.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
All right. Easy.
Easy. There you go.
It should be easy, right?
It
right?
really should be. It really should
Yeah.
be.
So, but the challenge is that we want to be good, right? You want to be a good player, and you want to.
And we've been taught that.
Right. Right.
Growing up talking, you ever think, oh, I need to be good at this? Never thought about it. You just said, this is what I have to say. You didn't think about the tone of your voice. Is it good enough? Is that the right word? Oh, I might mess up. Because of the process and the acceptance we experience learning to talk, we've never been really fearful in the way we are fearful of music.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the biggest fears is to get up and speak in front of people.
Sure.
That's a fear. That is a real fear. But in everyday conversation like this, no problem. If I sit down at the lunch table like I did today here at Sweetwater, there's no fear. There's no, well, who's going to start today? Hey, I learned these new words. Say this to me so I can say my new words. I got to be really good at this. Let me show you. No, it's just, how are you? Right? We talk about each other. I really want to listen. And, we get it right when we talk, but in music, we feel that we have to be good because in our mind, even in the back of our mind, we have a representation of what it's supposed to be. But that's always based off of someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Where in talking, it's, what do I have to say? Music, I think, should be the same. What do I have to say? And the more you have to say, the how to say it will come naturally.
Right. Right.
That's just my thought. I could be wrong.
Sure. No, it makes sense to me.
Well, I could be right.
There you go. So how do you or we reconcile then the fact that we practice, especially these days, there aren't a lot of gigs out there in the world, and the telling a story part kind of requires an audience. How do you develop that? How do you get that going?
Well, by practicing less and playing more. Mm-hmm. Okay. If you wanted to practice swimming, you'd get in the pool. You'd swim. So you're actually swimming. You're not moving your arms a few times and then stopping. Like we play and we stop. You're not just working on one arm. You might do that a little bit on the weight machine, a little bit, but then you swim a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So basically what we need to do is play more. Even if it's you by yourself, play more than you practice. Now, I know there's a lot of educators and teachers out there that will disagree with me, but I think we learn the most through our disagreements. If we can respectfully disagree and learn from each other. But if I look at how we learn to talk, you didn't learn to talk through practice. No
Right.
one ever said, go in your room and here's your words for the day.
Right.
Even when you're learning your ABCs, no one sat you in a room and said, say 7 of these letters over and over. Then we're going to add the next. You know that doesn't work. You talk.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, if you play, you'll learn at least 4 times faster than if you practice. But we have it backwards. We want to practice more than we play. We think if I practice enough, I'll be ready to play. But a baby feels they're ready right away to talk.
Mm-hmm.
And they get it right. Right? The only thing when you have an infant, 6 months old, they're not speaking English, but they're speaking. And they're speaking so clearly that we learn their way. Because the only thing that's wrong with what they're saying is the word. The intention, the tone, the energy. If they're more aggravated, the pitch goes up. You can tell. They just got to learn the word.
Right.
Right? But in many cases in music, we start with the word. You got to learn these notes before you can talk. I think you can play. A kid can play already. Then the notes will come. There's only 12.
Right.
Right? We can get the notes later, but get why to play first.
Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, the late, great Chick Corea was here a while back, and I did an interview with him.
Yeah.
And he had said something to me that I've always been fascinated by, which was that only about 30% of what even the best of us play is truly improvised, and the rest of it is vocabulary or things we've worked on.
Yeah.
Does that resonate with you? Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense. In other words, when we're talking, we're not making up words.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And in many cases, we're using them in the same order and the same way we have in the past. But what I call improvisation is that it's not pre-thought out.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have to pre-think what I'm going to say. We didn't write this interview out and we're reciting it. So improvising to me, and Chick is right, he knows much more than me. But to me, improvising doesn't mean that we're making up new stuff. It's just that we're using them freely in any order we want. But Chick, having gotten a chance to play with him quite a bit, it seems like every night he's coming up with stuff you never heard. You know, I mean, his improvisation level is so high that, however he defines it, I would go with his definition over mine because he's a master at it.
Right.
You know, but I equate everything about music, I equate to talking. Mm-hmm. And we're improvising right now, but neither one of us has made up a new word.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Not yet, anyway.
Not yet. We can work.
Maybe we will. We'll see. There's still some more interviews.
There's time.
Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I have seen you talk about and address many times, and in fact, we talked about it the last time you were here, is listening. Tell us what you listen for when you step into a musical situation.
Sure. Well, listening to me is great characteristics of life. And listening goes beyond just with the ears. It's what you feel. I mean, there's deaf people that still listen. Blind people can still see in their own way. Mm-hmm. Right? So to me, the key to life is becoming a good listener. But in music, I'll do an exercise literally where I'll play a note on the bass or any instrument and just see what it causes me to hear. What do I feel after I hear that note? And then I try to play that. Now, what do these two notes sound like together? Oh, it's pushing me here. It's pushing me here. It's sort of like driving a car and making a turn. What's here? Oh, whoa, let's go look at that. You go over there. It's that exploration thing. And that comes through listening. In the same way you can listen with your eyes and you can see that and say, wait a minute, that's telling me that I don't want to go that way. Mm-hmm. You know, so music is a feel. And what your ears hear, your body can interpret in one way. That's why we hear a song, we don't think about it, but our body starts to move. You might hear a different song, you might want to snap because it's swinging.
Right.
You know, so that's listening, but your body isn't part of it too. So it just starts by, you don't even have to ask how to listen. If you just do it and you do it honestly, the how will come later. Mm-hmm. You know, it's just there because we're good listeners or else we couldn't talk to each other.
Sure.
We're really good at it, but we can become better when you do it with intention.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. Sometimes I think it's hard for musicians to do that because we're so focused on what we do.
We're focused on the instrument. We're focused on what we've been told to do. But a child will just listen and react.
Hmm.
Before they learn anything, you'll see kids just dancing. They'll mimic in the mirror or whatever. You know what? If you want to learn to listen, put the instrument down and maybe play air guitar, air drums. Play in the air. That way there's no real instrument in the way. When you take the instrument out of your hands, there's no wrong or right way to play it.
Right.
You know, you're not afraid to hit the wrong note, and you can't do anything air guitar or whatever without smiling. So it brings us back to our childlike mentality. And at that point, I think we do it more honestly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Well, speaking of that feel, and the next step for me discussing that would be groove. And you did a fascinating demonstration when you were here one time before doing a seminar where you were playing, I think, 16th notes, and then you gradually dropped every 16th note until you were only playing the last one, along with a metronome.
Right.
And I think everyone was astounded at your sense of groove and sense of time. Can someone develop that? And if so, how do you do that?
Of course. I mean, I'm learning Spanish. You know, that's one of the things I've been doing over the pandemic. And I don't have the Spanish groove. I know some words.
Right.
Doesn't groove like Spanish. Can you learn it? Yeah. Will you sound like a native person? Maybe not. But will you be understood? Yes. More than learning the language is what you have to say with it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's the way I look at it. But groove can totally be learned. But we haven't figured out a unified way of teaching it. And I would go as far as to say most teachers say you can't teach it. But you can. You can. You just got to show people what it is. But what I found, if I look at the components that make up music, notes is one of it. That's where we get melodies, chords. But there's also tempo. Tempo's different than rhythm. I can play a beat, but if I speed it up, the beat doesn't feel the same.
Sure.
So feel, right? You don't even have a rhythm without spaces. So space is a part of it. Dynamics, how loud you play it. I don't care how good your beat is. If it's too loud, it's not going to groove. So if the band's playing here and you're here, I don't care how good you're playing, it's not going to groove. But if I'm playing reggae, but I got a thin bass tone, it's not going to groove. My notes can be right, my rhythm can be right. If it's too thin, not going to groove. So when all the elements that make up music are in alignment, it's going to groove.
Right.
Within that style of music, it may not be a groove that you like. You may not like polka, but if the elements of polka are there, it's going to be a nice polka or a country or whatever groove. So to me, what groove is when all the elements are working together. It's going to groove.
Right. Which,
yeah.
Give another plug to your first book. The 10 elements are discussed very thoroughly in the book.
Yeah,
so if somebody wants to dig deep into it, that's a great place to do it.
Thank you for that. Thank you for
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
That is a lesson that I teach. It's usually the first lesson that I teach when I do my music camps, when I know I'm going to have these people for a matter of days. I start with that. Let's break music into 10 parts and look at them all. Music gets much easier after that. And as I was teaching and taught that for a few years, people kept telling me, you should write a book. And I didn't want to. I didn't want to write an instruction book, a Wooten manual, a how-to, something I would have to defend.
Right.
You know, I didn't want to do that. So after many years, it dawned on me, write a story. You know, right? Just like, you might go see Star Wars. You can argue over it, but it's just characters.
Right.
Just enjoy the movie. So I wanted to do that and put the lessons in there, but you don't have to receive the lessons if you want. Just enjoy the story. But that book, The Music Lesson, where each chapter is based on an element of music. There's a whole chapter on notes, a whole chapter on tone, technique, phrasing, articulation. That came from the lessons that I was teaching at my camps.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And then we just took that further in the new book, The Spirit of Music.
Right. So I'm curious, you've worked in so many different musical situations with so many artists, and everything from 4 bass players to duos and different situations you've been in. How much do you change your playing to adapt to the different situations you find yourself in?
You have to change to adapt. The same way if you're interviewing me now, if you interview someone tomorrow, it probably wouldn't be the same questions. You'd have to adapt. We adapt in life all the time. Traffic, work, Adapting is what we do. We wouldn't be alive if we couldn't do it. So music is no difference. You just want to be able to smoothly do it. So if I'm playing with, like I got a chance to tour with two of my bass heroes, Stanley Clarke, Marcus Miller.
Right.
Wow, what a treat. But it was because the three of us could adapt quickly that allowed it to work the first time we did it. First thing we played together as a trio was Stanley Clarke's School Days, right? Stanley came in, Marcus went down low. So at first I went up high. Boom, doo, 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 doo. Stanley's got the middle chords, Marcus is low. But as soon as Stanley went up high, I had to listen where Marcus is. He's still down low, I take the middle. Or I lay out.
Mm-hmm.
Create room. If I create room, Marcus and Stanley stand out. So space. And it's not I'm leaving space, I'm playing space. Right? Like a sports person who doesn't have the ball, they're still playing. Right?
Right.
They're tuning in, not out. So I'm still playing, but I'm playing space. But when we found out, wow, we're doing this. This is it. This is working. We need to record this. And all of a sudden, SMV was born.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's a long answer to say, of course, you have to adapt to be a good musician, but you also have to adapt to stay alive.
Mm-hmm. Right. So given that, and again, all these different situations you found yourself in, when you put a band together, when you put a project together to play your music, what do you look for in the musicians you choose?
Sure. Everybody's good these days musically.
Right.
So that's easy. If I need a drummer to play, I don't write hard drum parts. You know, anyone can do it. But what I'm really looking for, especially if we're going to tour, who can I get along with? Right? Who do I want to spend hours on a plane or on a tour bus with?
Right.
And I make the joke with people, but I'm totally serious. And I say this a lot when I'm teaching. If we're on tour, doesn't matter how well we play, if we don't get along, somebody's got to go.
Right.
And if it's the Victor Wooten band, it ain't going to be me that's leaving. It's a joke, but it's true. But the vice versa, you know, is the same true. I'm in a band called Béla Fleck and the Flecktones, right? Béla's name is in that title twice.
Right.
It's clear whose band it is. But we get along. That's why we've been doing it, 35 years or so. We have to get along first. And I'll play with a lesser musician in my band if we really love each other. Because now we're going to have fun, and the music is going to show that fun, rather than if we're not getting along, but we can still play great. The music won't feel the same. It won't permeate. The goodness of us from the stage will touch the goodness of you. And whether you realize it or not, you'll resonate with it.
Right.
And that's what I'm looking for, a joyful experience on stage and in the studio. And if you hire me, I want to make sure I bring that to you. So I have to be ready to adapt. If you hire me in the studio, I have to be able to not even be me. Because I might want to just double thumb and slap, but you may have a ballad for me. Ooh, I need to give you what you want, not what I am, you know? So you have to be, it helps to be like a chameleon with your instrument. And if you can be that chameleon, honestly, you'll never be without work. And
Right.
a bunch of great bass players come to mind, you know, when I think of that. The current people like Lee Sklar, Nathan East, people like that who are on everybody's records. Going back before that, you get Carol Kay, James Jamerson, Chuck Rainey, Duck Dunn, everybody's record. Why did they get used all the time? Because they could play anything, and they were also fun to be around.
Right.
I've met most of those people, and they were good people.
Right.
You know, and I think that shows through the music.
They also have the ability, as do you, to know when to play the foundation and when to step out front and take the spotlight.
Absolutely. In our youth, when pop music just meant popular music, it wasn't a style, it was just popular. That's what it was about. Especially for bass players, it was laying down the foundation. When Chuck Rainey's playing Rock Steady with Aretha Franklin, Chuck knew it wasn't about him. Everything he played only served the purpose of making Aretha Franklin stand out more.
Right.
Purdy on the drums, it's all about supporting that lyric. Nowadays, because of the ability that we have, it has become a little bit more oftentimes about our ability. And I'm just waiting for my chance to show it, you know, rather than making sure the lyric gets heard, that the vocal gets heard or the melody or whatever. And then if you need that icing on the cake, then you do it, but only when necessary. I hope us bass players that are coming up with more ability, myself included, I hope me and the rest of us can remember that it's not about that. That's just icing on the cake. And icing is a thin layer. If you stick your fork in it and it's all icing, you can't eat it.
Right.
So we make sure that we've got what the bass was designed to do. We want to do that first.
Right.
Support. Yeah.
Awesome advice.
Thank you.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention that you've got your Hartke amp here.
Yeah.
You've been playing these for a while.
I have, man, but it wasn't until today that I actually got to play and turn it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Over the pandemic, I haven't been on stage.
Right.
So at home, I've been playing through same Hartke, but smaller versions, 112 or 115, you know, a small little kickback or something, and they sound great. But today I had my 410 on top of the 15 with 1,000 watts. I was like, ooh, I missed that. I love these things, man. Yeah. I like this head, 1,000 watts. Who needs 1,000 watts, right? But it's like being able to lift 1,000 pounds, right? You're not going to go around lifting up stuff, but if you need it, it's there.
Sure.
But also at a soft volume, it's not sweating, not even working hard. So it's got a lot of headroom. Right? Just a couple of knobs, easy to use. And these hybrid speakers, the high drive, which are a hybrid between aluminum and paper. What an ingenious thing. So you get the beauty of both. The highs of the aluminum, but the fatness of the paper, which is what I like about it. And that's what drew me to these cabinets in the beginning. But volume is a thing that serves a purpose. And if we know when and when not to use it, it'll be a great ally to everything we want to express. Just like language, there are some things that are meant to be said loudly.
Right.
You know, if someone came in right now and said there's a fire, don't tell me quietly.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, right.
Shout it.
Yeah. The other part of the equation is the Fodera basses that you play, and those guys are so wonderful.
They are wonderful. I love people. Of course, I love the product, but I love the people more. And whenever I find a product that I like, especially if I want to endorse it, meaning I want to tell the word about it, I want to make sure I like the people.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter first that the product's good. It's the people. So when the high drives first came out, I researched it and played through it. I like this. I said, but now I want to see who's the guy. There's a guy named Hartke. I need to meet him. He's alive. Let's meet him. Who is he? Do we like each other? It's not just whether I like him. I want him to like me too. Because this is going to be a marriage if we're going to endorse each other. So then I meet Jack Knight, who runs Samson and Hartke. Find out he's an amazing bassist. Of course we hit it off. He's a great guy. We talk on the phone. Fodera the same way. I met them back in '83 in a studio when I was in the market for a new bass. Joey Laricella, who works with Vinny Fodera, showed up at the studio with 2 basses. He found out how much I loved it. He said, take it, send the money when you get it. Like, what? Who does that?
Right.
I've been in love with those people ever since. And for the most part, I've been playing the same model bass since '83. They look different.
Mm-hmm.
They were nice enough to create a way of making it look like a yin-yang symbol. But it's still the same Monarch bass with PJ, EMG style pickups. It has become my sound, my DR strings. They're nickel wound strings. That's what I've been playing forever. It just feels like me. And the biggest thing I'll say about this, Mitch, is when the gear's right, I forget it's there.
Right.
And that's what I want. That way, I'm totally in the music. I'm not being pulled out of the music because the amp doesn't sound right. The bass doesn't feel good. My strings are too stiff. When all that's right, I'm just in it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I look for.
Right. I saw something where you were talking about at home, you string your basses up with heavier strings. And then when you go out and play, you use lighter strings.
Yeah, it's when I record.
Okay.
When I record, just about all the bass lines the bass parts on my records are strung up with heavier gauge, higher action, because it sounds better. It does.
Sure.
It just sounds, it's fatter. Everything sounds like the bass is supposed to sound. But if I would, I'm a short guy. If I were to play basketball, I would be taller if I wore, 6-inch heels or
Right.
platforms.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be as comfortable. So I don't play those basses with the heavier strings live because I'm not as comfortable. And when I'm going to do it every night, I need to be comfortable.
Sure.
So that's why I don't do that live. I'll just roll up the low end on the amp or on the bass or whatever with the EQ. But in the studio, I can play a little, take a break, come back, play a few notes more, take a break. It's easier in the studio because of the sound. That's what's going to live forever, right? Live, you're going to walk out remembering the experience, not so much was there enough low end on the bass?
Right.
So I want to be more comfortable so I can be real on stage and give you the real me. Even though I'll be honest and say, I like the heavier gauge and the higher action. I love the sound better.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And I so appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us today. I know we've been keeping you really busy today. I have just one last question for you.
Sure.
I always ask this question when I have a very high-level musician sitting across from me, and that's what makes a great musician?
The word that pops into my head the most is honesty. Honesty, right? My favorite bands to watch are little kids because it's not so much what's coming out, it's what's going in. It's the equivalent, Mitch, of if you have a baby that goes to kindergarten and they come home with that ugly looking painting that they made with their hands and it's still on the refrigerator now.
Right.
They're the best painter in the world, not because of what it looks like, but because of what it is. So to me, the best musicians are the most honest ones. That's why there can be a musician like a Willie Nelson who has less technique and ability, but says more. And you feel it more. So, I love all of it. I love the technical stuff. I'm a technical player, but I also want to use that technique to make you feel something, not just to make you watch and say, I'm good, but to make you feel something that teaches you something about yourself. Makes hopefully makes you be a better human. So I love the musicians who do that, not
Right.
just the ones who have ability.
Right. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Good question.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. And again, for taking the time to sit down with us. And highly recommend everybody check out both your books. You've been re-releasing some of your earlier albums on your own label. So those are out there.
Yeah.
Few gigs are starting to show up on your website that some things are coming up in the
They're
future.
coming.
And hopefully
They're
we'll be
coming.
seeing lots of music to come as things open up.
Thank you. I hope I can play here again.
Oh, please
either
come
in
back.
The indoor theater or that great new one outdoors. I
We'd
just
love
I love coming here to Sweetwater.
Anytime. Absolutely. Would love
Thank
to have
you,
you come
Mitch.
back. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. I appreciate
And thank you for joining me today. We've been with Victor Wooten. An incredible interview. Our thanks to him. And thank you for joining us. I'm Mitch Gallagher from Sweetwater.
it.